Hi, everyone. Welcome to the finance chapter. We're going to begin by talking about fractions, decimals, and percents, all representations of a number, and sometimes, sometimes we want the answer as a fraction, sometimes we want it as a decimal, and sometimes we want it as a percent, depending on what business we're dealing with or the application. So let's first look at how to convert from a percent to a decimal. So to convert from a percent to a decimal, we move the decimal 2 positions to the left. So let's take a look at an example. We could have 7.525%. So, for example, that could be a percent for a tax. To convert it to a decimal, okay, percent means divide by 100. So we can take 7.525 divided by 100, which would tell us move the decimal point 2 places to the left. If I'm solving an equation, I want the number as a decimal. We're going to see with simple and compound interest that using a decimal in our equation is much more efficient than using a percent. Now to go from a decimal to percent, to go backwards, you move the decimal 2 places to the right. So let's look at this number. This is a really important one. 1. What is 1 as a percent? It's not saying what is 1%. It's saying what is 1.00 as a percent. One whole, I move the decimal 2 places to the right, is 1%. Okay, you can think of it as multiplying it by 100. So 1 times 100 is 100%. One whole is everything 100%. Now we can convert between a decimal and a fraction, which we talked about previously. We read it and we write it. So if you say 0.23, that's not going to help us. But if you say 23 hundredths, then we can write it. And depending on the situations, whether we want to simplify or just leave the fraction as is. Now, to go from a fraction to a decimal, if we can read it, if it's tenths or hundredths, we can write it. But I would just say use long division. Your calculator can probably take care of this. So 3/7 is 3 divided by 7, which is 0.428. And the most important thing is make sure we read directions. It says round to the hundredths place. It says 2 decimals, so it's 0.43. In money, we're going to want to round to 2 decimals. And a lot of times, 2 decimals suffices. So now we've learned how to convert between a fraction, a decimal, and a percent. And if I ask you to convert from a fraction to a percent, I recommend going fraction to decimal to percent. Take 2 steps and try instead of trying to find the shortcuts. And depending on the situation is whether we're going to use the percent, the decimal, or the fraction.